Guess what, everyone? We now have a theme song. Love it. This I think is what makes your life. Not just because you do a webinar, but you have a theme song.
Yeah. There you go. You've got it, man.
Listen to this. What a beautiful voice that man. Oh,
I know. Who is that guy?
I don't know. Who is it?
Who is that?
He's the guy sitting next to us. Well, Paul, we're going to let this play just for a moment here while
Thank you.
more and more people look.
Okay. I'm never good at listening to my own music.
Yeah, it's like me listening to my own talk.
I always feel I always just go, oh, I should have done that, and I should have done. You know, I'm always here. You always hear the fault in it. So.
All right, now we're loading in.
Here we go. Here we go. Picking up the fans now. Oh, you know the words. Whoa.
I do.
No. Oh, you got it, man.
Yeah. All right. Oh, this is the fade out.
Oh, the fade.
Oh.
Here we go.
Oh
the beautiful fade.
Can you tell I was a DJ for a couple of years there?
Were you really?
I was in college, yeah.
Brilliant. You got the skills.
That's why I have this microphone. I wanted to relive my college DJ days all over again. So I figured, well, if I'm going to be on this all day long, I'm going to have a really, really good mic for making sure that I do it. So
you're right.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to the No CD Wednesday night webinar. And for those of you here in the U.S., it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we're going to have some guests this month. Very exciting for me to bring in some people who I just really, really have some good affinities with. We've got tonight, Paul's here. We're going to introduce Paul in a minute, but we're going to have a couple of our advocates. Some of you know already, Tori and Kyle are going to be here next week. Following that, Shala Nicely is going to be here, who's a therapist here in the US, but also has OCD and has written about it in her book called Is Fred in the Refrigerator? And yours truly wrote a little forward piece to it as well. And then to end the month with my very dear friend, Margaret Sisson, who is the founder of Riley's Wish. Margaret's son, Riley, had OCD, but a substance abuse issue as well, and unfortunately died of an accidental overdose. And so we're going to talk about obsessive compulsive disorder and substance use and addiction at the end of the month as well. So that'll be a nice way to round it out. But tonight, from Ireland, hello, Paul. How are you?
Hello. I'm all right. I'm not too bad. I'm nervous now on this live stream, but I'll be okay.
I think. I mean, you wrote an album, Paul.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I was excited. So, Paul has a podcast that he does in Ireland, and I've been fortunate enough to be on it a few times. Once about OCD, and once where we just talked about music, which was so fun to just talk about another topic that is near and dear to my heart besides OCD, because I talk about OCD all the time. So it's fun sometimes to take a break from that and to talk about music and why Rush is the greatest band ever in the history of the world and all those types of things. But it was a blast. And Paul, I think you had seen one of these and you reached out to me. That's kind of how this started, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I was, as you do with OCD, troll on the internet looking for videos about things, and I had seen. I don't think I seen a video of what you were talking, just being interviewed and stuff like that, and then I watched subsequent more videos on OCD and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, I'd like to talk to that dude. He seems cool.
I mean, you figure when someone has as Irish a name as Patrick McGrath, he must know what he's talking about, right?
I didn't even think of that. That's how stupid I am. I was just like, he's cool, and so I reached out, and thankfully you did it. We had a great chat. It was great. And what was cool about it was that my friends who listened to the podcast, they were like, oh, I kind of understand what OCD was, because everyone said you explained it so perfectly, and that was good, because that can be hard with your friends because it's such a weird thing.
Yeah. Well, Paul, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about your OCD experience and what kind of role it's played in your life. I mean, you're a musician, you've got an album out, you've done a lot of things, but you have OCD too. And sometimes people with OCD just feel like oh, I got OCD. There's nothing I can accomplish in my life, and it's just going to be too rough to do anything. So I'd love to just kind of sit back and hear your story a little bit and tell everybody about yourself.
Do you want me to start when I first got OCD, or
yeah, if you're comfortable, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah. I didn't get diagnosed having OCD till like last year, but I always had things that were OCD that I didn't know it was OCD. Where I'd be afraid I'd see the devil in the mirror, so I wouldn't look in the mirror, and like just things that were like records if they were scraped, and I thought I had AIDS before. I don't know how I thought I had AIDS, but I thought I got AIDS, and like there was always like little things, and then just last year it got really bad, and that was when I kind of got help. Well, to get help, and they were like, it's OCD, and I was like, OCD. I was like, was that not just my whole thing was just, it was kind of obsessing about things, but they weren't like just little things, like but then you kind of, when I look back and I go, oh man, that makes sense, like certain things that I would do, and it kind of I could see, oh, you're right, I get what I mean. Oh, I get what you mean. Like even with music, I'm very obsessed when I'm doing it. Not saying that's my OCD, because that could just be creative or something. I don't know, but it could be intertwined.
Because there's people who just are personality-wise just get very into something as well too, and that's their thing, and they're driven and they're focused. And some people sometimes want to say, well, I have OCD, but I use it because it's so helpful to me. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to call that OCD then so much as something else.
Yeah. You can kind of I mean, it did affect me. OCD did affect me musically, because I would constantly work on something, my first album for sure, and then the next day I do it again, and I do it again, and I do it again. Like it was never perfect, and then a few years go by and you're still doing it, and you're kind of like, whoa, this is kind of getting a bit crazy. So I did kind of go a bit mad doing my first record for I don't know what reason I did it. It was like I needed it to be perfect, even though nothing is ever perfect. And that is kind of a thing in OCD. You kind of want everything, you're looking for an answer, and you'll never get an answer. So
yeah,
it was kind of like.
And did the record turn out perfect, Paul? Or
I don't know. I guess I don't know. I like it. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. I listened back to it for the first time ages ago. I hadn't listened to it in ages. I think it was with one of my friends, and we were like, whoa, it sounds cool. It sounds good. Because that's the last thing. Like when you were playing it, oh man, I just hear go, oh, I should have done that. That snare could have been there, that kick, so but there's that thing, art is never finished. So So I don't know. But I'm proud of it. Next one hopefully will turn out good. So.
Is it hard having OCD to also say that you're proud of something? Because there's two ways OCD could go with that. One, you should never be proud of anything, because that could be a sin. That's bad, right? Pride is horrible out there. Or the other thing is, well, then it means that you think you did a great job, and your OCD might be telling you didn't do a great job, right?
Never thought of that, actually. I guess that I'm never fully happy for the first while, and then I kind of get used to it, and then it's okay. It's like if I did a drum take and I hated that drum take, and after a few months, if I listened to it, I'd get used to that drum take, whereas before I'd obsess about it, but then I'd obsess about not having the same it's like that kind of thing. It's just micro things can get in the way of with stuff like that. But music, for me, I try and use it as a positive kind of thing. I try and not like let it get me. Like when I'm bad, it's very hard for me to kind of, it's difficult to kind of get the energy to do something, because you just it's like, what's the point? This, it just can wear you down. And I think I don't like really doing anything creative wise when I'm not feeling too good. If I'm feeling in the middle, that's okay. But if I'm feeling really bad, I never really write stuff that's great when I'm feeling really bad. I need to be either in the middle or I think in the middle is good because you can from afar you can view your sadness and your happiness, if that makes sense. I probably went off on a tangent there. Sorry, but
Sorry.
So,
and with the music, how is the OCD? You know, obviously it's a passion of yours, but how has the OCD interfered with it?
It just interferes in the thing that it just stops me doing it because when I'm bad, I'm bad. I can't. I struggle to do things. I struggle to, even like go work out and stuff like that. It kind of just, I have to force myself. And when I force myself, I do feel slightly better, even if it's just for a nanosecond. But it's just when I'm in that cloud of OCD, it's just it just engulfs you. I'm sure people know that exact feeling because you're just thinking about it all the time, and that's when it interferes with my music because that's kind of like what I just like doing most. So that kind of depresses me as well. That I don't have I'm not hearing things as I should hear them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. You talked about, having to explain OCD to friends and how difficult that can be when you're in the midst of it, or to family. What have you kind of learned over time, though, as ways to help people understand what OCD is?
I think a lot of my friends that I told about I had OCD, they didn't realize it was that serious until I kind of told them, how bad I felt, and there is that kind of thing in the media that it's washing your hands.
Sure.
And that's just, you can't blame anyone for thinking that's what it is. But my friends, they understood, they were supportive, and I think that's the hardest thing, because you're thinking, oh, if my friends knew what's in my brain, they'd hate me. And I think a lot of people's friends would actually be like more understanding, because anyone could get it. Not saying anyone can get it, but I mean, you can't blame someone for having like a problem that they don't want. And I think your OCD will always try and tell you, oh, if they knew what you thought and this and that. And it's just like that annoying neighbor trying to annoy I won't curse, annoy you. And there it is. And yeah, so my friends, I think they just learned that it's just something that I have, and they're kind of more supportive with me with it. So they're cool about it. So that's good.
Well, we get lots of questions, of course, that come in. So you can see the feed there probably. And I'm going to throw some out, and I answer a lot of these, but it's always interesting to, if any of them kind of strike a chord for you that you want to throw in something, I'd be interested in kind of hearing your opinion too. And I'll throw some more questions at you as well as we go through the night, if that sounds okay.
Okay, yeah. I'm just reading them here now.
Sure.
I don't take antidepressants anymore. I actually stopped taking my antidepressants for a while. Well, they were SSRIs. Is that a SSRI?
Yeah, antidepressant.
Yeah, and I got worse. I actually was doing really good, and then I stopped because I thought I'm doing good, and then I stopped, and I started getting really bad again. So I actually started taking them again. Not that I'm telling anyone to take them, but for me, I think it just eases that anxiety just a little bit. Not that I want to be on them forever, but I think it just eases it a little bit.
Well, and the other thing too is that we always tell people, and obviously I can't give medical advice, I'm not a medical doctor, but if you are going to go off something, work with your doctor on a taper schedule. Don't just stop medication, because that's not a very good idea for anybody.
Yeah, that's me. I just like, I'm fine, man. I'm good. That's a typical thing I would do.
Yeah. Pupper says, I'm obsessed with figuring out why things are immoral. Let's see, we'll pull it up here. I've thought about it for so long that I've run out of answers, and now I feel like a psychopath when I can't find why. Do you have any advice? One of the things that we always talk about with OCD is the idea that the more that you attempt to find answers, the less satisfied you become with anything. And then there comes a point where there is no answer for you. And then OCD gets really frustrated that now you can't find any answer whatsoever. So I would say that the goal of all of this isn't to try to figure out an answer to something. The goal of this is to be okay with not knowing something, to be okay with being certain, right? There may be things that I've done that are immoral. That also might depend on what religious background or moral background you also hold on to as well, too, right? There's thousands of them to also decide from. So instead of having to figure out the absolute answer for something, sometimes I just have to be okay with, oh, this is what's happened, and now here are the consequences, and I'm going to go with it, right? When we get to that point, though, and Pupper, you said you're obsessed with figuring out why. When we have to figure out why, OCD's won, right? OCD is now in control, and you are going to be on a never-ending conquest to figure out why something is. And remember, OCD's nickname is the doubting disorder, which means whatever answer you give OCD, it's going to say, close. So, but not quite, but so close, so close, but not quite though, not quite at all, but so close. Try again, and you're going to spend the rest of your life being so close. You know, the Greeks wrote a myth called Sisyphus, where Sisyphus angered the gods, and so they threw him in Hades, but they told him he could become a demigod if he got the stone over at the base of that hill up to the top of the hill. But the joke they played on him was the stone was 1 pound too heavy, and the hill was 1 degree too steep for him to get the stone to the top. And Sisyphus has spent eternity attempting to roll that stone up to the top of that hill, and he's never quite achieved it. But he's still trying to figure it out. And that's where people get stuck. Paul, did you ever have an experience like that where you're just kind of stuck? Yeah.
All the time. It's that kind of, even when you get better, that's the great thing about OCD. When you think it's kind of not there, it still is there. You get better, and it's like, oh yeah, but you feel better now because it's actually true, and you're like, oh my god, you could just you can never win. It was like you said before. I'm probably gonna get this wrong. OCD wants 100% of the answer, but it's never satisfied with the answer.
Right. Yeah. You can't satisfy the doubting disorder.
No, but it is very hard. It's very hard to kind of, because, you know, when you've got anxiety, you're kind of not thinking straight anyways. So it's that uptake in your brain, and it's just it's difficult. It's not an easy thing, because everyone, I'm sure, who's in the chat knows exactly how it is. And everyone's OCD will say, "Oh, I wish I had that OCD," and I've said that a million times. So it's hard, but we'll get there.
I always knew whenever anyone new came into a group that I was running, that the new person at some point in time in that group was going to say, "Oh, I wish I had that kind of OCD," because that would be so easy to deal with. Right?
Yeah, it's true. I've had that thought many times.
Yeah,
I was like, why couldn't I have that one where just whatever it is, like that'd be brilliant. That'd be handy. But then it won't be OCD.
Then it wouldn't be OCD. Yeah. You know, one of the questions we get on here frequently too is, why does OCD feel so real? And my standard answer is, because if it didn't feel real, it wouldn't be a problem, right? I mean, it has to feel real. That's the nature of the disorder. It must feel real for it to actually be a problem. If it didn't feel real, you'd be like, oh, there's that again. And then you'd move on and just live your life, and you wouldn't care, right? So it's not about that. Matthew says, my suicidal OCD has brought on a lot of nihilist points of view. My old self before OCD would never have thought like this. Is there any way to go through ERP and get back to being hopeful and content? Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people who have gone through ERP have developed some contentment with their life and have become hopeful again. That in the midst of OCD, you only see the worst case scenario. You know, no one with OCD's ever walked in my office and said, Dr. McGrath, I'm really afraid everyone loves me and thinks I'm awesome. You know, we've treated nobody for that. That's not the problem. OCD will only focus on those worst case scenario types of things. It's not going to focus on anything that would actually go well whatsoever for anybody. So there's always an option through ERP to get to the other side and to think differently about things than the way you currently feel or think about them now. Nat says, I have pedophilic OCD, but sometimes I think it's not OCD and I'm actually someone who likes children and it gives me anxiety. I'm so scared of myself. And I think that's, you could replace any kind of OCD into that statement and be afraid that you really were this thing, or you really wanted to do this thing about, maybe I do want to harm people or molest people or contaminate people or become something that I'm not. What if I'm really that thing, right? And again, that goes along the line of, if you didn't feel that way, you wouldn't be so scared of OCD and it wouldn't really bother you all that much. And it probably, well, it might not even be diagnosable at that point if that was the case, because most people then would just look at this and go, oh yeah, I could deal with that. That's not. You have to be drawn in by OCD in order for OCD to really be the thing that really bugs you, right? So. Let's see. I had OCD specialty therapy. This is Mike. For 6 months, found it hard to find exposures that would trigger me in the right way. I had to stop that treatment because it wasn't working. This makes me worry my OCD is real and that I never had OCD to begin with. Does it still sound like OCD? Yes, because now here's the interesting thing. OCD can take over OCD treatment and tell you, well, if you don't do OCD treatment perfectly, then you can't get rid of me. So if you're going to get rid of me, you have to do it perfectly, and you have to feel exactly this way and for this exact long, and you have to be triggered in exactly the right way, and you have to find the perfect ERP exercise in order to make this work. And if you don't do that, then I won't go. Which then people give up on it and then think, well, I must truly be this because there's nothing anyone can do to help me. Well, there are things that people can do to help you if you decide you're not going to let OCD interfere with your treatment. And the therapist recognizes that and makes that a part of therapy, and recognizing that we're even going to do therapy slightly wrong. We're going to make mistakes in treatment. We're not going to do perfect ERP exercises. Well, but if I don't do perfect ERP exercises, can my OCD go away? Sure. But you're going to have to take the chance to see that for yourself. You're not going to trust me, obviously. I mean, Paul, I'll tell you, and I'd be interested in your take on this. It'd be great as a therapist if everybody just trusted me and believed everything that I said. But we don't see that happening all the time. So what was a turn for you, Paul, in kind of getting better, where you had to, switch from, do I have to believe everything in my head is true, or is there another way of looking at it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't remember any day like specifically. I think it was just when I kind of stopped trying to figure it out. For me, you get into that loop, and you like I said earlier, you'll never get an answer. So it's when I stopped trying to figure it out, I started to get it less, and then I thought, well, that's peculiar, and your OCD will go, well, that's because it'll always kind of switch back in. But I think it was just the not taking the bait. OCD always wants to string you along with the bait, and I think when you calm down about a thought, if you get a thought or a feeling or whatever, it's just sit with that for a while. I started to do that. I started to and I did a lot of kind of meditation and stuff like that, no matter how uncomfortable it was, and I wanted to kind of figure it out and try and go, this, and I thought that because of this and this and this, I just sat in the uncomfortableness, and the more I kind of did that, the more I kind of trained myself to kind of start to feel better. And that was kind of a good way for me to excuse me, a good way for me to kind of keep going, seeing that I would get better by doing that.
And I like that idea of having to sit with the discomfort instead of having to make it go away, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the hardest things you've ever had to do.
Definitely. It's the hardest thing ever because it's like you're different. You feel like I think the thing about it is like I'm not the person I was. It's like well, who am I? I don't know myself, and that's a scary thing. And facing your fears, I think that's the fear. You just have to face it and sit it out, and which is the last thing you want to do, but you just have to. You just have to.
This question is OCD and addiction. Why is the terminology between the two so similar, such as compulsive behavior, relapse, recovery? Curious to hear your perspective on this. We don't classify OCD as an addiction. We classify it in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that we utilize in the US and really across the world, as a OCD and related disorder. The addictions have their own category. Addictions, at least in the DSM right now, are talking about a substance of some kind, right? Usually. So you've got nicotine, or you've got cocaine or alcohol, various types of things that are entered into the body and have an actual impact on the way the brain functions, versus OCD, which is something that's occurring internally. And yet there are a lot of kind of things that we say between. Now, I would contend that I'm kind of a purist, and to me, compulsive behavior is reduced for me only to OCD. I don't use the word compulsive outside of OCD. I might use impulsive behavior. So when I'm drinking, it's an impulsive decision. It's an impulsive behavior. It's something that I may not sit and think much about what the consequences are. It just the joy of having it, which again sounds similar to what you're talking about in OCD, but the driving force for the drink might be so that I don't go into withdrawal, versus the driving force in OCD is the compulsion is done to neutralize the obsession. And if I don't neutralize the obsession, I might become that thing or accept that thing or be that thing. And how horrible would it be for me to accept that? I just ran over a bump and it could have been a person. And if I accept that it could have been a person, I don't go back and check, then I'm as good as a murderer. Versus, I haven't drank for a while and I'm starting to get some cravings and urges and I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. And I know it's going to be coming soon if I don't get some alcohol in me. So I better go get some so that I don't go into that kind of withdrawal experience. But yeah, we do use a lot of terminology similarly. In fact, I opened the first in the world treatment center for OCD and substance abuse. It's the Foglia Family Foundation Residential Treatment Center. It's part of Amita Health in the Chicago area. And part of that was influenced by our guest that we will have at the end of the month, Margaret Sisson, and the death of Riley. And she said, she sent Riley to go get treatment at places for OCD, and they kicked him out because of his substance use. And he was trying to, at times, if he could get a hold of some kind of substance just to help him through the night because of the addiction, and nobody would treat it. And unfortunately, Riley's no longer with us. And partially, I believe that that's because the treatment world didn't do a good enough service to Riley, which was to treat his entire condition. So to me, it's important that we look at everything. Now, Paul, I won't ask specifically for you, but there's a stereotype about Ireland that there's a lot of beer that's drunk in Ireland.
It's a true stereotype.
Yeah. And, I remember being in Ireland and talking to friends and family there. And one of the questions that I got at a party one night was, why does America have so many therapists? And I just thought it was kind of interesting. And I joked and said, well, we don't drink as much as you do, right? And they kind of went, well, touche, there you go. But there's definitely cultural aspects in the way that people deal with mental health too. So what is kind of the status in Ireland overall these days on looking at mental health, and how is it viewed and accepted now? I mean, Ireland went from a very Catholic nation to that's laxed a little bit, so religion has played less of a role, and in Ireland you kind of have two diagnoses: daft or half daft is kind of the typical description of people I know. But yeah, what's that perception these days in Ireland of mental health?
Oh, it's got a lot better. It's got a lot better. When I was younger, You know, there was that you were afraid to tell someone you felt depressed. It was definitely more of a stigma around depression and mental illness in Ireland. I think the last 10 to 15 years, it's probably improved a lot. Like, it's definitely got a lot better, and people are more open to talking about it, and there's more events going on where people are like raising money for mental health. And yeah, definitely a lot better. Definitely when I was younger, it was not something we talked about that much, but I'm glad it's got a lot better, because there's a lot of people struggling out there, and it's sad when they can't speak to someone, because if it's like anything, you bottle something up and it'll keep growing and keep growing and growing. And yeah, that whole Ireland thing of like, just have a drink and drink away your problems. That was kind of the old mentality, and that's changed a lot, thankfully, now.
Yeah,
which is only a good thing.
No, it's a wonderful thing. So I'm glad to hear that.
They still drink a lot, though.
That
hasn't changed.
I think Ireland was the sixth. It's got less people in it than the city of Chicago does, and it's the number 6 drinker of beer in the world, I believe. So, but that could be all the tourists that come to Ireland as well too, and consume some Guinness while they're there.
Could be. Blame them.
Yeah, we'll blame all the tourists. This might be interesting, and I wonder if this applies to you at all. I wake up every morning and the thoughts just start hitting me one after the other. They're all different, and I just let them be. What's the best way to combat that? Acknowledge them, do ERP. They change so fast. Did you find like sometimes maybe it was the morning or the evening or something that it would be worse or more difficult, or how did it work for you?
When it was at its apex, it was like all day, every day. Wake up in the morning, straight from the moment I woke up. And it was just, I was exhausted by the time night time came, because it was just a constant barrage of 24/7. And that's the hardest thing. You wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, not this again. There's that kind of I just want to go back to sleep. But if you just face it, which is like we said earlier, that is hard. That's very hard. And just like a cloud, kind of see it as a cloud passing by the thoughts. I think that can kind of help. Not saying that it helped for everyone, but yeah, the waking up in the morning with it that's when it's bad for me. When I go through a bad run, and when I don't, when I was getting better and I thought, oh my God, I haven't woke up and thought about it. That was a cool day for me, that I didn't even think about having OCD. That was quite joyous.
Cool. Good. Once again, everybody. My friend Paul is here. Reminder to everybody. I'm so glad to have all of you here at our OCD Wednesday night. Downloadable app. You can get on Google Play or iOS. You can go to OCD.com or treatmyocd.com. We do a free call with our care team so that you can check out some people who might be able to be helpful. OCD is currently serving people in the United Kingdom, United States, and Australia. And we are continuing to grow that into other countries. Stay tuned for more countries coming very soon. We'll have some announcements out on that. And we continue to take, at least here in the U.S., more and more insurance as well too. So check us out again, OCD.com or treatmyocd.com. And tonight with us, my friend Paul Amelia is here, and we are so happy to have here's one of Paul's songs, now our theme song for our Wednesday night webinar, actually, because I've been listening to this song constantly for the last 3 days. So, Paul, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate having you here.
No worries.
I'm going to say it again there. Oh. Gosh, I feel like I'm back in the radio station.
That timpani gave me a scare when it came in. I was like, "Oh, I forgot about that part." Someone said they're digging the music. Well, thank you very much.
That's great.
Sirat. I don't know, did I pronounce your name wrong? Sorry if I didn't. If I butchered that, but thank you.
Let's see. Have others with OCD had intrusive thoughts about their therapist or God? Have heard intrusive thoughts can be about anything. Yep. But I haven't read about others having thoughts about these things. If it's about God or religion, it's typically scrupulosity, we call it. And yes, you can have intrusive thoughts about anything, anyone. It could be a person, it could be the dog, it could be the cricket that's on the sidewalk, whatever it might be, you could have intrusive thoughts about something. So OCD is an equal opportunity screwer-upper of your life, and it doesn't care about anything. Nothing is sacred to OCD. Everything is subject to its whim and to its desire to screw things up for you. So. Paul, did you have any questions on there you thought were interesting that you wanted to say something?
I'm just reading them. I should get my glasses. I'm so bad. Someone said I was in a narcissistic and emotionally abusive relationship for 3 years. I think OCD for me was a learned behavior because I had to behave compulsively in the relationship for reassurance. Thoughts?
Yeah, we could see OCD develop after difficult experiences, right? People who've experienced a trauma can develop OCD. You might, let's say somebody broke in your home, right? And then they beat you up. And now you could see people starting to do checking of locks and doors and everything. And over time, you might not be afraid as much about being beat up again, but you still do these behaviors, right? Because you've learned that they keep you safe. Well, every night that I've checked the locks, no one's broken into the house. So therefore it must be true. It's kind of like I always say, if you ever go to downtown Dublin, Paul, you probably know this, but if you're ever in downtown Dublin, there's a homeless man and he carries a 25-foot bamboo pole. And if you ever go up to him and say, "Sir, why do you have a 25-foot bamboo pole?" He said, "Well, it keeps the elephants away." And if you say, "Sir, there's no elephants in Ireland," he said, "Well, the pole works very well, doesn't it?" And it's that kind of philosophy then that people hold on to, is that it's my compulsions that keep me safe. And if I didn't do them, something bad would happen. All right, let's see. I have weeks where I feel okay and then weeks where my OCD goes nuts. Is that normal? You were kind of describing a little bit of that, Paul, that you feel something similar to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, little things can trigger it off again. Just little kind of things. Just stay the course.
Let's see. My OCD is about dread. Dreading something bad is always just about to happen. My compulsions to prevent the dread or the bad things from happening consumes my days and night and even my dreams. How can ERP help with this? Well, the whole goal of exposure and response prevention is to eliminate the compulsions. So if the compulsions are the things that consume your day because you're doing things to prevent something from happening, the whole goal is to stop the compulsion and to learn a couple of things. Number one, the compulsions don't stop things from happening because you could do all the compulsions you want. You're still going to see that people that you're close to are going to get sick. They're going to die, all those kinds of things. Why? Because it's a normal, natural thing as part of the human condition. You can also recognize that doing the compulsions starts to interfere with your life and you're not actually living your life. And maybe that's one reason why you're thinking, well, nothing bad happens to me. Well, yeah, because you're not living your life, right? There's a line that I love from Shawshank Redemption, one of my favorite movies, and it's "Get busy living or get busy dying." And there's a lot of people out there who aren't getting busy living. They're doing everything that they can to make sure nothing bad happens, instead of allowing themselves to learn that if something bad happens, they can handle it, or that the bad things that they're afraid of happening don't happen nearly to the level of time or intensity that they think that they're going to. Now, do bad things happen to people? Yeah, of course. Absolutely. 100%. But if I look at this one, what Kim wrote, and I applied that to my own life, my wife would not have gotten cancer because I would have done enough compulsions of all the things that I could have dreaded, and it would have prevented her from getting cancer. Now, I get that that's an extreme example, but it's the truth, right? She has a terminal cancer. So, we deal with that every day with her, and she gets a little bit worse all the time. But I don't believe for a second that if I had just done some compulsions, that she would have not gotten cancer. And I don't believe for a second that the reason she got cancer is because I didn't dread enough that maybe she'll get cancer. She got cancer because she got cancer. I mean, just there's something in her genetic makeup or in the environment or whatever that led to the cancer that she has. I don't for a second believe that I could have controlled it in any way whatsoever by doing some kind of compulsion. But Paul, with OCD, and I don't have OCD, so I'm always fascinated to talk to people who have it. What's it like internally when OCD is telling you, I can make things better? If you just do what I tell you to do, everything's going to be fine.
I don't know. It's very hard to it's hard to describe because, you know, when you're going through that, like, everything is real. You could have the most craziest thought in the world, and
Sure.
it could make absolutely no sense, but it's real because you have your anxieties getting high and all that kind of stuff. But I just view it as like just an annoying kind of neighbor who's just nagging me, and it's like just don't listen to that. Like, you shouldn't ignore it, because if you ignore it, it'll grow too. You know, if you try and like stop it, or, you know, don't do anything, it'll just keep growing silently. So you just gotta kind of, for me anyways, I just listen to it, I take it in, and I don't judge it. I just try and see what it is.
Is that a learned thing though? I mean, how did you go from, let's say, pre-OCD, where, you know, stuff would pop in your head all day long, you're like, oh, whatever, and then OCD comes along, it's like, well, wait a minute, I gotta think about that now, and now to walk yourself back from that again, what's that experience like?
That's difficult for me. That takes like that can take like 2 weeks if it's something that kind of gets me bad, because it'll start off like it's like a little bit of snow going down a hill, and it'll get worse and worse and worse and worse, because then it's like anything, the more you think about something, the more, you know, you could look in the mirror, like I said, and you think I'd see the devil. It was so stupid. I watched an episode of Dallas when I was a kid, and JR, I never watched Dallas in my life, and JR,
yeah, I know how popular it was in Ireland. Yes, right.
Yeah, it was popular, and JR seen himself as the devil, and that for years I would like freak out about looking in the mirror, and it was like I couldn't do this.
Oh, that's why that's the mirror then.
Yeah, so it was like that, and like stupid things of like, if I kicked a stone, I remember kicking a stone onto a road before, and then I came home and I was like, what if some car hit that stone and then it turned over the car and all those people died? And I was like, oh my god, maybe they did die. Yeah, just like nonsense things like that you can look back at it now and go, it's nonsense, but at the time it's not nonsense. It's completely real, because you're given it power, and that's what I think. It's like, don't give, as hard and all as it is, and I'm sure I'll get bad some other times, it's just to not give it power. Don't give it the power it wants, which is, it's hard. Like, I'm sure everyone on here knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's just hard, but you just gotta try and take what it says, but don't believe what it says. Not even believe what it says, but just don't give it the satisfaction it wants.
Yeah, and that means, and here's, I think, the rub, and maybe the hardest thing for a lot of people, but that means every day, no matter if it, but today's the worst day ever, and could I just this one time just do the compulsion, just this once, right? And then guess how many more worst days you're ever going to have are going to come? Tons, right? Because now OCD says, oh, well, as long as we get him to feel like it's the worst day he's ever had, then he'll do the compulsion. All right, we'll make every day now feel like it's the worst day he's ever had.
Yeah. And I think it's harder to know you for people who kind of don't know they have OCD. It's, you know, my compulsions are all mental compulsions. They're not. I never have any. I don't have any outward things. I don't like touch things or anything like that. It's never anything like that. So I think that's. I mean, the film business definitely hasn't done anything to help that, or TV business, because anytime you see OCD on TV, it's people washing their hands and stuff like that. So that's hopefully something like that will change.
Stephanie asked a question directly to you. It says, Paul, it seems like you are still working on recovery. Do you feel like you have come a long way since you started?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm like, as embarrassing as it is to say this, like I wanted to, like, I was suicidal when I was bad at my worst, and that's a sad thought to feel like that you just don't want these thoughts anymore. But it'd be sadder if I did something, because it's just, you'll get there. You will get there. It'll take time. It's like working out. You're not going to get a six pack in a week, but you'll get there. And I feel I'm still going through it, and I don't expect to ever not have OCD, but it's how you control it. It's how you control it, and I'm doing a lot better.
Well, and I thank you. I appreciate what you said there about, I think there's a lot of people with OCD who either OCD can take on a what if I were to harm myself kind of theme at OCD. And OCD can also be very much associated with depression, because one of the definitions of depression is a loss of interest or pleasure in things that I once enjoyed. And if OCD stops you from doing things that you once enjoyed because of all the compulsions and obsessions, there's commonly some suicidal thoughts that happen. And we know that people with OCD have suicidal thoughts. So in those moments, I'm just happy to hear someone say it, right? And not just hear it from me as a therapist, but that for someone with OCD to be able to say, yeah, those thoughts have crossed my mind, because there are times I think it would be easier just to not have to deal with this shit than deal with it on a daily basis.
Right? Yeah. It's that was kind of the hardest thing. And I just remember crying in front of my mother, and my mother's like, no, don't, and that was the moment I was like, I need to go to the doctor. That I couldn't. It was either, you have two options in life, and I'd rather take an option where I'm still chilling around, listening to music. So yeah, it was tough.
And for those who are kind of on that precipice now about therapy, not therapy, what was it like for you to walk in and start to talk to someone and lay your story out and admit, I got some issues I need to work through?
It was kind of, I mean, I was crying when I was talking to my doctor, and he was like, it's okay. And it's just, you go through that thing of that you think they're gonna think you're mad or something like that, and it was further from the truth. My doctor was like the nicest person ever to me, and he was understanding, and I think that helped a lot, that you weren't being judged, that someone was like, you've it's a mental disorder you have. It's not, no one asks to have OCD. No one in the world goes, geez, I love having this OCD. It's great, Jack. But I think it's just,
what do you want for Christmas? OCD. OCD would be great if I could.
That new OCD album, all the hits, all day long. And it was just I wasn't being judged. I think that was a good thing for me. And when I was told it was OCD, I think that helped a lot. Even though that it momentarily helps, because your OCD will say, this is an OCD, but it does help that you kind of go, okay, I didn't ask for this. This is some sort of thing that's happened in my brain, and I think that's the first step in getting better, is getting help, because you're taking that leap to go, okay, I need to do this. And that's the hardest step, I think, of all, is to actually go for help, because you always want to try and figure things out yourself and think you can do it, but we need other people to help us.
Mm-hmm. And do you still use that help?
Yeah. I still go to I've to go back to be doctor soon, actually. But yeah, I do actually. It's I'm kind of, in a weird way, I've kind of used my OCD to kind of try and get rid of my OCD. Not get rid of it, but to kind of help my OCD, if that makes sense, by doing like meditation, and mindfulness really helped me. That really helped me doing mindfulness meditation, I have to say. And yeah, meditation's hard though, because to stay still, for me anyways, for 2 minutes without thinking of something, it's quite difficult. But I found that really helped, and like doing the ERP, like facing your fears. That's kind of like the hardest thing to do, because you're gonna you're not, when you get weird thoughts, they're not just gonna go away, they're gonna get amplified. But it's just to kind of sit with that thought, not judge anything, just try and sit with it, which is the hardest thing to do. But you actually will slowly start to feel better, even if you have a thought about something that disturbs you. If you kind of sit with it and you do, you confront it, you actually do. For me anyways, I actually kind of felt better, even though I had a thought that was not the thought I ever want in my life. I felt better when I faced it.
Mm-hmm. So you can look at a mirror now and not be bothered by that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm always still bothered by that. Yeah, I always feel a bit kind of on edge, but it's not really, it's not a big thing for me. Like my OCD can kind of switch. Some things that would bother me yesterday wouldn't bother me in 3 weeks, or can kind of switch to different things. And I think I got really bad before with it, because I went through a really bad relationship, and it really affected me badly. And I thought about that relationship from the moment I got up in the morning till the moment I went to bed, all day, every day. And then the minute I started to get better, then I watched a show, and then my OCD just latched onto what was in the show. So it was like I had got used to obsessing about this one thing. I think it just jumped onto something else when I got really bad. So yeah, things trigger stuff for me. Like I can be fine, little things trigger it, but like TV shows and stuff like that. But that's not a reason not to watch a TV show, because if you do, you're gonna let your OCD win. I'm probably blabbering on here, but yeah.
No, you're fine. Mike VW is learning to accept or tolerate uncertainty the same as never having confidence in something about yourself. Surely you need a certain degree of confidence about something to move on with your life. I don't think it's the same as never having confidence in something about yourself. I think it's actually building up a ton of confidence in yourself. When you know that you can tolerate uncertainty, the confidence you have in yourself is huge, I believe. Right? I mean, I've never been to South America, but it'd be fun to travel there. I don't know what it would be like to go there. I'd have to do probably a little bit of research, and even when I got there, I wouldn't know everything. I wouldn't be lacking confidence, though. I would still have confidence that I could handle myself, because I've traveled to other places and I've done well. So I would have confidence in that, even though I still have uncertainty. So I don't think a lack of confidence and a lack of uncertainty are equal by any means. Maybe I can become confident in my uncertainty. And maybe that's the whole goal of OCD treatment, right? How can I become confident in my uncertainty? Could be interesting. Someone asked when we're coming to Ireland. Hopefully soon. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'll get back to everybody soon. We'll see what the next country is, but that would be
Come
great.
on, Ireland.
Go Ireland. Everybody pull through Ireland. Yeah. Once again, everyone, we're the No CD webinar here. And my friend Paul, thank you for joining us, Paul. Paul, tell us. This is a little chance for you just to talk about you. So tell us about your music and what you've done and where you hope to take everything. Love to hear that.
Oh God, how many hours have you got? Oh geez, I'm terrible at talking about my music, but I just started writing music when I was really young. I started doing piano. I won't give you the whole. I'll give you the short story. I started playing piano, and then when I was a teenager, I got into guitar. I always liked writing songs. Like even when I was young and I was made to learn Mozart pieces, I'd write my version of Mozart and stuff like that. I'm sure it was terrible, but when I was a teenager, that's when I really got into kind of making music, like creating music. I always just wanted to just create music, and from then on, I was like, my goal in life was to have an album out. So when I did my first album, it was just that was cool for me because, I was. Everyone was saying, you're not going to get an orchestra on your album, no way. And I was like, I'm getting an orchestra on my album, and and that, like I was saying to you off air, I went to Malmo to do that, and that was just incredible. Like that for me, that was just the highlight of just seeing an orchestra play your arrangements, and it was cool. I like that's all I ever wanted was to do something like that, and I'm happy I did that, and yeah, I keep writing music, and it's good. I have an album coming out this year, which is like a concept album about dreams, and I have another one coming out at the end of the year, which is like a more political kind of record.
And if people wanted to get your music, where would one go to find
you? Would go to Spotify if you want, and I can make 0.7 cent per play. I'm on YouTube.
In the US, that's 0.007 cents per play.
Oh, even better. So I'm on just Paul Melia, Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, all that jazz. And yeah, if anyone wants to hear anything, it's you might like it, you might not like it. But if you like it, just send me a message. Tell me you like it. Might give you an ego boost.
There you go. And Haley said she'd love to do a live as well. So if there's anybody out there who would ever want to come on and do a live with me, please get a hold of us at No CD. You can reach out just at my name. It's Patrick McGrath at nocdhelp.com is my email, please. No dot in there. It's just Patrick McGrath at nocdhelp.com. Reach on out to us. We'd be more than happy to have you on, or you can email Kaylee or any of the team, or just put something in here and Kaylee can get in contact with you. She can see all the chats and everything as well too. So I'd love to have more and more people involved in this. And we love all of our fans who come on a weekly basis and join us in all of this as well too. So that's been great. Lots of stuff coming in here saying thanks to you, Paul, for joining us tonight. It's been great having you, and we really appreciated it. And
thank you very much.
It's always good to share the stage a little bit once in a while. These folks listen to me yap on a weekly basis, blah blah blah. Usually telling the same bad jokes or something like that. So it's nice to have someone else kind of come on in and join the experience as well too. So
sorry if I went on tangent.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So we're gonna play our little theme music here on our way out of it. Remember, this is Mental Health Awareness Month here in the U.S., but maybe around the world too. Who knows? And so we're going to have on some more guests for the rest of the month. Keep your questions coming on in, though. We love having them and doing all the answers that we can. And Paul, maybe we'll have you on
I can't hear you.
What?
I'm going to have to turn that bad music down. I can't hear you.
I got to play that awesome music. Paul, we'll have you on again at some point in the future.
Oh, it'd be my honor. Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks everyone for the comments, and hope I explained it somewhat good. I'm terrible at explaining things, so there you go.
So much for the Irish gift of gab. It's the generation there.
It's just missing.
As always, Paul, good to see you again.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. We absolutely appreciate it. And we'll see you all again next Wednesday.